I never thought I'd be sharing a story like this. My name is Rachel Sinclair, and I'm a high school science teacher in a small town in Ohio. Before my experience, I was always a skeptic. I teach biology and chemistry, so my worldview was largely based on rationality and science. But a few months ago, something happened that completely shifted my understanding of reality. It was a normal Saturday morning, and I went out for my usual jog around the neighborhood. Suddenly, I felt an intense, searing pain in my chest. I collapsed right there on the sidewalk. Later, I learned that I had suffered a massive heart attack due to a congenital heart defect that I never knew I had. The next thing I remember is floating above my body. I could see paramedics working on me frantically, trying to revive me, but I felt strangely calm and at peace. Then, I started to move upwards, speeding through a dark tunnel toward a brilliant white light. When I reached the light, I found myself in the most beautiful place I had ever seen. It was like a garden paradise, with colors that I had never seen on earth and the most heavenly music surrounding me. The air was filled with love. I could feel it all around me, almost as if it was a tangible presence. As I looked around, I saw my grandmother, who had passed away when I was a teenager. She looked young and radiant, just like I remembered her, but with an even greater sense of vitality. She hugged me and told me how proud she was of the person I had become. But then she said something I wasn't expecting. It wasn't my time yet, and I still had an important purpose to fulfill on Earth. At first, I didn't realize that I would be going back. My grandmother told me there was something I needed to see first. She took my hand, and in an instant, we were in a vast amphitheater-like space. That's when I saw him. I saw Jesus. It's hard to describe what it felt like to be in his presence. Jesus radiated the purest love and compassion, and it filled me with an overwhelming sense of peace and acceptance. He smiled at me and said he had something important to show me. With a wave of his hand, I suddenly became aware of countless souls all around us. Jesus explained that we were in the third heaven, a kind of transitional space where souls come after they pass away. This place was divided into different areas, each with its own purpose. In one area, I saw souls who were resting peacefully. Jesus told me these were people who had lived righteous lives and were awaiting the final resurrection. They were experiencing a state of comfort and tranquility. In another area, I saw souls who were engaged in learning and growth. Jesus said these were individuals who needed more spiritual development before they could move on to higher realms. They were being guided by angelic teachers, working through their past mistakes and learning important spiritual lessons. There was also a darker area, filled with souls that appeared to be restless and unhappy. Jesus explained that these were individuals who had rejected love and goodness during their earthly lives. While they weren't being tortured, they were separated from God's light and love. Jesus told me that even these souls would have a chance to choose differently at the final judgment. Jesus explained that the third heaven is a temporary place, a way station between life on earth and the final eternal realms. He said that all souls come here for a time of reflection and preparation. The righteous rest in joy, those who need growth are given opportunities to learn, and even those in the darker areas have a chance for redemption if they turn toward the light. As I looked around, I recognized other people besides my grandmother. I saw my childhood best friend, who had died of cancer when we were in college. She was in the learning area and seemed so happy and peaceful. She told me she was working through her past regrets and learning to forgive herself. I also saw a distant cousin who had struggled with addiction. He was in one of the darker areas, but I noticed angels gently trying to reach out to him. Jesus told me that there's always hope for every soul, no matter how far they've strayed. Jesus said he wanted me to return to earth with a message. He told me that too many people are either afraid of death or believe that nothing happens after we die. He wanted me to tell others that death is not the end, it's a transition to something far greater if we choose love and spiritual growth. Jesus emphasized the importance of how we live our lives. Every act of kindness, every choice for love over hate, and every moment of forgiveness shapes our souls for eternity. As my experience neared its end, Jesus told me it wasn't my time yet. He said I still had important work to do, and I needed to share what I had seen. My grandmother hugged me one last time, and then I was rushing back down the tunnel. Suddenly, I was gasping for air as the paramedics shocked me back to life. I found out later that I had been clinically dead for over 10 minutes. Since that day, everything has changed. I'm no longer afraid of death because I know that it's just a doorway to something more beautiful than we can imagine. I also have a newfound appreciation for this life and the opportunities it gives us to grow in love. Now, I try to see everyone I meet as an eternal soul on their own journey, and it's made me more compassionate and patient. I try to view people as Jesus does, with unconditional love and endless hope for their potential. One of the most important messages Jesus gave me is that our choices and actions in this life shape our souls and our experiences after death. It's not about following religious rules, but about growing in love and compassion. When we choose forgiveness over resentment or generosity over selfishness, we align our souls with divine love. These choices don't just affect our external circumstances, they shape the essence of who we are as eternal beings. This was evident in the afterlife. The souls who had cultivated love and wisdom were in a state of peace, while those who still had work to do were learning and growing. The souls in the darker areas had consistently chosen selfishness or cruelty, but even they weren't beyond redemption. Jesus showed me that love never gives up on anyone. Some people have been skeptical when I share my story. As a science teacher, I understand how incredible it all sounds. If it hadn't happened to me, I might not believe it either. But I know what I experienced was real, more real than anything in this physical world. Jesus also explained that the third heaven is just one of many levels of heaven. He mentioned that higher realms exist, each more glorious than the last. I later learned that this aligns with the Book of Enoch, which describes multiple levels of heaven. In the peaceful area, I saw what looked like a reflection of Eden or paradise. There was a beautiful tree that Jesus called the Tree of Life, glowing with a light from within. It was a source of spiritual nourishment for souls in that realm. In contrast, the darker areas were sobering. Jesus explained that these were souls who had turned away from love in life. While it wasn't eternal punishment, it was a state of separation from God's light. Yet, even here, there were angels reaching out to them, offering a path back to the light. Jesus mentioned that certain actions, like dishonoring God or engaging in corruption, could lead souls to these darker places. But the purpose wasn't punishment, it was always about redemption. I've been on a spiritual journey ever since my near-death experience, and it's something I'll never forget. The message Jesus gave me about judgment was unlike anything I'd ever imagined. It wasn't about punishment from a deity, but rather a process of self-realization. When we die, we go through a life review where we experience the impact of our actions on others, not just ourselves. It's like having this moment of perfect clarity, where we feel the consequences of all our choices. If you live with kindness and love, it's a beautiful and affirming experience. But for those who caused harm, it can be difficult to face. However, the purpose is never about punishment for its own sake, it's about growth and healing. That was such a profound concept for me. Jesus also showed me something related to what's described in the Book of Enoch, specifically the idea of corruptibility and incorruptibility. The third heaven, where I was, is a realm in between these states. It's a place where souls shed the corruptible aspects of their earthly existence and move towards a purer, incorruptible state. This happens gradually, as each soul learns and grows. Some of the features I witnessed in this realm were straight out of Enoch's writings. I saw the sweet-flowering trees with their incredible fragrances and the two springs, one flowing with honey and milk, the other with oil and wine. These weren't literal substances but symbols of spiritual nourishment and healing. There was also a fiery river that Jesus explained wasn't for punishment but for purification. Souls would immerse themselves in it to burn away negative energy and purify their spirits. One of the most breathtaking things I saw was the place Enoch described as where the Lord rests when he goes up into paradise. It was a place of indescribable beauty, filled with a sense of divine presence. I also saw the tree of life that Enoch mentioned, radiating ineffable goodness and fragrance. But not everything was light and beauty. I saw the darker areas as well, the cruel darkness and unilluminated gloom that Enoch spoke about. These were places where unrighteous souls resided, but Jesus emphasized that even these areas are not eternal. They represent temporary states of being, where souls can still choose redemption. Jesus also talked about a final judgment, and it was very different from the traditional concept of heaven and hell. He explained that the third heaven is an intermediate state. One day, there will be a resurrection and a final judgment, but it won't look like a courtroom with a harsh judge. Instead, it's a moment of complete clarity, where each soul fully understands the consequences of their choices. In that moment, they choose whether to embrace divine love or to remain separated from it. The most important thing Jesus wanted me to understand is that God doesn't send anyone to hell. Instead, we choose to separate ourselves from love and light. Even then, the chance for redemption always exists. The opportunity to return to divine love is always there, although the path back might be more difficult if we stray too far. I was fascinated by Jesus' descriptions of the realms beyond the third heaven. He didn't show me these realms directly, saying they would be too overwhelming for me in my current state. But he told me about dimensions of indescribable beauty, love, and creative potential. In these higher realms, souls that have fully aligned with divine love continue to grow and evolve. Some take on responsibilities, like guiding others or even helping to create new worlds and forms of life. The ultimate goal, Jesus said, is for each soul to realize its divine nature fully and participate in the ongoing expansion of love across the universe. It was also important to him that I understood how all of this relates to the different religious traditions on earth. Jesus showed me that all genuine spiritual paths lead to the same ultimate truth. Every tradition describes the same reality of divine love, but in different ways based on cultural context. He has appeared to people in many forms throughout history, always trying to awaken them to divine love. Whether we call this reality God, Allah, Brahman, or something else, it all points to the same source. The key truths, love as the fundamental reality of the universe, our interconnectedness, and the eternal nature of our souls, are present in all authentic spiritual teachings. When I asked why there's so much conflict between religions if they're all leading to the same place, Jesus expressed deep sadness. He explained that the conflict arises when people focus more on the forms and rules of their faith rather than the love those teachings are meant to inspire. He also showed me how negative spiritual forces distort religious teachings, turning them into sources of division and hatred. But he reassured me that light is always stronger than darkness, and that even these negative forces will eventually be redeemed by love. Jesus also gave me specific messages for different groups. To Christians, he emphasized that his message was always about love, loving God and loving your neighbor. Too many of his followers have lost sight of that, becoming caught up in doctrinal disputes or political power. For people of other faiths, Jesus expressed respect for their traditions. He said that sincere practitioners of any faith who seek wisdom and compassion are close to his heart. For atheists and skeptics, Jesus was especially compassionate. He understood that many reject religion because they've encountered harmful or distorted versions of it. He said that an honest atheist who treats others kindly is closer to God than a religious person who uses faith as a weapon. His message for everyone, regardless of belief, was simple: love one another. Treat every person you meet as if they are the most precious being in the universe, because in the grand scheme of things, they are. After this experience, you might wonder if I still fear death. I can say that I no longer fear what comes after death. I know it's a transition to something more beautiful than we can comprehend. However, I do still respect the process of dying itself. I understand that it can involve pain or emotional challenges as we let go of our earthly lives. Most importantly, I've gained a deeper appreciation for life. Our time here is precious. This is where we have the unique opportunity to grow and impact others in ways that we won't have in quite the same way after death. So while I look forward to what's beyond, I'm committed to making the most of my time here, loving deeply, learning constantly, and making a positive difference however I can. Now, I know a lot of people are probably wondering, did my experience give me any insights on some of the big questions about the afterlife? Like, for instance, do our pets go to heaven? That's a question I get a lot. I'm happy to share that yes, I did see animals in the afterlife realms. Jesus explained that all life is sacred, and the souls of animals do continue on after death. Their progression may not follow the same path as human souls, but they absolutely experience joy and love on the other side. I actually had a wonderful reunion with my childhood dog. He was so excited to see me, full of energy and love. It reminded me of the eternal nature of the bonds we form, even with our animal companions. That memory warms my heart every time. Another common question I get is about reuniting with loved ones, and about soulmates. Do those things exist? Yes, they do. I saw many joyful reunions between family members and friends who had passed on. The love between souls is one of the most beautiful things in the afterlife. It's even purer than the love we experience here, unclouded by ego or fear. As for soulmates, it's actually a bit more complex than what we often see in movies or books. Jesus showed me that we have many souls we're deeply connected to, not just one other half. These connections can be with romantic partners, family members, close friends, or even people we briefly encounter but who leave a deep impact. Often, groups of souls incarnate together over many lifetimes, playing different roles for each other to help each other learn and grow. So, a soulmate in one life might be my child, parent, friend, or even adversary in another. What I learned is that all these relationships are here to teach us about love in its many forms. In the afterlife, I could finally see the bigger picture and understand the true purpose behind all of our earthly connections. That really changed my perspective. Now, you may be wondering, did Jesus confirm the reality of reincarnation? Yes, he did, with some important clarifications. Reincarnation is an option for souls who choose it as a path for further growth and learning. But it's not a mandatory cycle we're trapped in, as some Eastern philosophies suggest. Some souls choose to reincarnate many times to gain different experiences and learn various lessons. Others may only incarnate a few times, and some highly advanced souls choose to incarnate to help others, even though they don't need it for their own growth. Jesus described Earth as a particularly intensive school for souls. The density and challenges of physical life provide unique opportunities for growth that aren't available in the same way in higher realms. But it's always a choice, and souls can choose other paths of growth and service in the spiritual realms if they prefer. This new understanding was profound for me. Jesus also shared insights into the purpose of human life on Earth. He explained that Earth is like a crucible for souls, a place of intense experiences that help us grow spiritually. The main purpose of our time here is to learn to love more deeply and wisely, to overcome the illusion of separation, and to realize our true divine nature. He showed me that the challenges and suffering we face on Earth aren't punishments but opportunities. Every difficult situation is a chance to choose love over fear, forgiveness over resentment, courage over complacency. These choices literally shape our souls. Jesus emphasized the importance of free will. He explained that God could have created beings who automatically loved and obeyed, but that wouldn't be true love. By giving us free will and placing us in a world of duality and challenges, we have the opportunity to choose love authentically and to co-create our reality. This perspective completely reshaped how I see life's challenges. It's important to note that Jesus didn't dismiss the very real pain and suffering people go through. He showed incredible compassion for human suffering, while also showing me how even the darkest experiences can serve our highest good if we approach them with courage and openness. He also assured me that we're never alone in our struggles. There are always spiritual beings, guardian angels, spirit guides, and evolved souls, working to support and guide us, even if we can't directly perceive them. I also encountered other spiritual beings beyond Jesus during my experience. I saw my grandmother and other souls I knew, and I also saw countless angelic beings. They were incredibly beautiful, beings of pure light and love. Some appeared similar to traditional depictions of angels, while others were more abstract, like swirling patterns of colored light. Jesus explained that there's a vast hierarchy of spiritual beings, each with different roles in the cosmic order. Some focus on guiding and protecting individual souls, others work on planetary or galactic levels, and some are involved in the very process of creation itself. I even saw beings that seemed to be from other worlds or dimensions. Jesus confirmed that the universe is teeming with life, much of it in forms we can hardly imagine. As souls evolve, they have the chance to explore and interact with many different realms and forms of existence. Now, that's pretty mind-blowing, right? And yes, Jesus did mention extraterrestrial life visiting Earth. He shared that, yes, Earth has been visited by beings from other worlds throughout its history. Some of these beings have been beneficial, some neutral, and some with less positive intentions. However, he emphasized that humanity's spiritual growth must come from within. No external force, benevolent or otherwise, can do that work for us. He explained that as humanity evolves spiritually and technologically, we'll have more open contact with other civilizations. But this will only happen once we reach a level of spiritual maturity where we can handle such interactions wisely. It's fascinating, and it left me wondering about our future on Earth. Jesus did show me glimpses of potential futures, but he was very clear that the future isn't set in stone. Our collective choices shape the path we take as a species. He showed me that humanity is at a crucial turning point. We have the potential to create either a beautiful future of harmony with each other and our planet or to continue down a path of destruction. The choice is ours. No matter the path we choose, Earth and humanity will ultimately experience a great spiritual awakening. But our choices now determine how smooth or challenging that transition will be. So, did Jesus offer any advice on how we can positively influence this future? Yes, and it was beautifully simple. He said that the most powerful thing each of us can do is to work on our own spiritual growth and to practice love in our daily lives. Every act of kindness, every choice for forgiveness, every moment of standing up for what's right, all of it contributes to the positive evolution of humanity as a whole. He also stressed the importance of taking care of our beautiful planet. He showed me that Earth is a living being with its own spiritual essence, and that our treatment of the environment has profound spiritual implications. This reminder truly resonated with me. It emphasized how our individual choices matter in the grand scheme of things. Seeing how every thought, word, and action creates ripples that affect not only our lives but also the entire cosmic web of existence, it gave a whole new level of meaning and responsibility to how I choose to live. And this experience also changed how I approach my work as a science teacher. I still teach the scientific method and evidence-based thinking. Those skills are crucial. But now, I also try to instill in my students a sense of wonder and openness to possibilities beyond our current scientific understanding. I encourage them to question everything, including their assumptions, and to approach the universe's mysteries with both rigorous skepticism and open-minded curiosity. I like to share with them that many of history's greatest scientists were deeply spiritual people who saw their work as a way to understand the mind of God. Most importantly, I convey that science and spirituality aren't opposites, they're complementary ways of exploring this incredible universe we live in. Finally, to anyone who's skeptical about experiences like mine, I completely understand because I was a skeptic myself before this happened. I'd say, keep an open mind and do your own research. There's a growing body of scientific literature on near-death experiences, including cases where people report events that happened while they were clinically dead. But I also suggest looking at the effects of these experiences. Studies show that people who have NDEs, regardless of their prior beliefs, tend to become more loving, less materialistic, and less afraid of death. They often make major positive changes and dedicate themselves to helping others. If this were just a hallucination caused by a dying brain, why would it have such profound, lasting effects? Ultimately, I recognize that this has to be experienced to be fully understood. I don't expect everyone to believe my story, but I hope sharing it might open some hearts and minds to the possibility that there's more to existence than we can perceive with our physical senses. The most important message I want people to take away is this: you are loved beyond measure. Each and every one of us is an eternal being of immense value and potential. No matter what you've done or what you've been through, you are worthy of love and capable of growth. This life is a precious opportunity. Use it to love deeply, to learn constantly, to forgive freely, and to help others whenever you can. Don't be afraid to face your shadows and heal your wounds. That's how we grow. And remember, Death is not the end, it's a transition to something more beautiful than we can imagine. But don't use that as an excuse to neglect this life. Our time here is incredibly valuable, and the choices we make shape our eternal journey. Trust the process of life. Even when things seem dark or difficult, know you're on a journey of growth and that you're never alone. There is always hope, always a path back to love, no matter how far you may have strayed. Thank you for letting me share my story. I hope it brings some comfort, hope, and inspiration to you all.